And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. And George, we start today's pod with some great news. I know it's not an official game yet, but I think we can officially say today on the podcast, the Anthony Richardson era is officially underway. We have just learned a few minutes ago after practice is over on Thursday that Shane Steichen announced that Anthony Richardson, rightfully so, is getting the start Saturday in Buffalo for the preseason opener for the Colts. So now in the first preseason game, the first true team activity he will partake in going against an opponent, Richardson will be the Colts starter. George, I'm going to ask you maybe the easiest question I'll ever ask you on this podcast. Was it the right move?
No, absolutely. But I also like the fact that Shane Steichen was pretty honest about it. When he was asked, why are you making this move? He said, we want to see what he can do. And I think that's kind of the argument we've been making now for a month, is get him out there. Let's see what happens. Live situation. The other team, there's no red jersey. They don't know the plays that are coming. He doesn't know their alignment. He hasn't faced it 15 times already this summer. Let's see how it goes. I think that was always the right call. And as I said before, I wasn't going to overreact to whoever the starter was, but it is a snapshot at this point in time. It's our first checkpoint on this road to see who's going to start week one. And at this point in time, it tells us that Anthony Richardson's in the league.
And he's going to play just about a quarter with the starter, so not a ton of reps or experience, but still, nonetheless, like I said, the right decision, because seemingly they are listening to what we've been saying of give him every chance to basically lose the job. And if he shows you over an extended amount of time he can't truly be the starting quarterback, okay, there you go, there's your answer. And now they're kind of throwing him to the deep end, which I think is the right move, and see if he can sink or swim. That's going to be a great first opportunity. I'm glad you brought up the running aspect. That's, for me, what I'm most excited to see. Anthony Richardson now in a true game environment where, like I said, the whistles are not going to be blown if there's a defender near him. We're not going to say sack in, when he's in the pocket trying to still make a play. It's now all of a sudden when the play breaks down, when there's pressure near you, when you are trying to look to pass and there's a running lane open, how valuable will his legs be and how much will he run too? Like we've kind of talked about, the different styles of running and running quarterbacks that they have. Josh Allen is someone who's kind of still a pocket passer, I would say, but does use his legs a ton. Obviously, when Lamar Jackson with that dual threat is a huge part of his game, where kind of Anthony Richardson will fall on that scale more, kind of towards the Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, where he's running a ton, or more, we'll say, I guess, Josh Allen-like, where he runs, but still throwing is the biggest part of his game. I'm really excited to kind of see that aspect, because now for the first time, George, we could actually see how dangerous his legs are going to be.
No, there's no question. All we can go right now is his college tape. And, I think there were probably times you'd like to see him run a little more. I think that's one of the things watching him at Florida is that there were times where you felt like, hey, there's nothing there. Take off, go make something happen with your legs. And he hung around in the pocket and navigated things and, ended up making a throw downfield. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that as a pro, and what the coaches are telling him. We don't know exactly what the message was from the coaches at Florida. And we don't know yet, what the message is here as far as do they want him, I imagine they want him always looking with his eyes downfield. There's no question about that. But I think there's got to be a clock, for a guy with his abilities. There's got to be a clock in your head. And once that expires, take the running lane, go and get the free yardage, so to speak, and live to play another down rather than, necessarily forcing it. So that's kind of thing you really can't simulate out here, out in training camp, because the pass rush isn't live. Like I said, the whistle blows, but a lot of times, even then, you'll hear them yell sack or they'll blow the whistle, and they'll still go through with the play. So, it's not. There is no comparison, and I think that to me is one of the biggest things that we're going to see, his decision making. Is he taking off too early? Is he not taking off often enough? It's only a quarter, so you're not going to get a ton of this, like you said, but I think it'll be a good first sort of snapshot of where that's at.
And that's why I'm really excited that he's starting, just because also, too, you look at the Buffalo side, it looks like a lot of their defensive starters are going to be playing. That's a good test right away. We know, and everyone always talks about the speed of the NFL versus the speed of college. The NFL is so much faster. So like you said, now with a live rush in his face, how will he handle what is going to presumably be guys getting to him faster, windows opening faster, but also closing faster when it comes to receivers and tight ends looking to, fire downfield. I'm really excited to see his, decision-making process, his clock, everything about kind of how he's going to play the position now at the level, at the highest level for the first time. Like I said, I think that's so important to kind of see how he's able to do it and not sheltering him, not kind of taking it easy, just saying, all right, what can he do? Let's see now when things are actually live, how he's able to play. And one thing I love, George, too, when he was talking at his press conference after practice on Thursday, was the fact that he said the thing he's looking forward to, the thing he's focusing on in this first start in the preseason, consistency. I love that because that shows, George, I think, self-awareness. And it's hard to correct areas if you don't really know what areas are flaws. So he's not going to go out there and try to make all these big time plays. He still might, which would be great. But he's right now focused kind of almost down and down. How can I make the most of this play call? How can I make the most of this play? How can I make sure that I'm now, after I have a good play, running or passing, how can I make sure that I can, build on top of that and not have a negative play or a turnover that erases all the good I just did? I love the fact that he's going into this game where you could easily have a lot of nerves, easily, feel like you're going to try to win the job. And by doing so, try to do too much or try to make the big play and kind of air it all out and put it all on the line and risk it. He's focused on seemingly something that's very simple, which is consistency, which is obviously what we've been talking about. The biggest thing that's going to make or break him in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to see. Again, in a quarter, I don't know how much you're going to see of that, but
Sure.
there should be multiple drives, and so you will be able to compare one drive to the next, and hopefully, I think a lot of that is based on decision making and some of the things that we were just talking about. So hopefully that's all consistent. It's where he and the coaches want it to be, and you can lay a foundation to build off of. On the Buffalo side, there's a big national story too. We haven't heard yet, but it could be the return of DeMar Hamlin. I heard earlier today that they're not sure yet, whether he'll go or not, but that could also be a big spotlight and maybe add to the energy that Richardson's facing in his first NFL action.
That's a good point because it's obviously a tremendous story, and you have to imagine that crowd's going to be juiced and jacked up more than maybe any preseason game ever if he's on the field and playing. So it's almost, again, it's even like a regular season like atmosphere, just in the sense of the crowd and what they're going to be like. Because most preseason games are not sleepy. This is not an insult to any fan, but it doesn't count. So it's like you're not going to bring that same energy and passion you would to a regular season game because it's different. And so, like you said, like him possibly returning just from how it impacts the Colts, obviously it's a tremendous story for him and inspiring to everyone. We are very happy to hear and love to see it. It's also, from the Colts perspective, could kind of give you that true game-like atmosphere that otherwise you would not get from a crowd perspective in the preseason. And if you look at this,
and
George,
from the Bills defense, I mean, you figure they're going to play a little bit harder, to welcome him back. At least that would be the thought.
Good point. I didn't think about that. I think you're 100% right about that. So you should get a really good test from this Bills defense right away for Anthony Richardson, and we'll be able to kind of see what he truly does look like now that, reps are live and we're actually having some game-like atmosphere situations presented in front of him. And what's also
just one other note, I don't know if you've seen the weather forecast yet, but is horrible on Saturday up there. I think there's supposed to be some heavy storms. So that could affect this too. I mean, as we're talking about the passing game and the decision making, this could become a rugby scrum pretty quick up there if the weather bears out the way that it looks like it might.
George, that's why you get paid the big bucks. I did not even think to look up the weather in Buffalo. I did not. And so you're right. If we get heavy rain, use Richardson's legs more often, you would think. Maybe a little bit more zone read with him and Evan Hull. Could totally change the game plan, which hopefully is not going to ruin my next point I'm about to make here, because I'm excited for this. And so hopefully Mother Nature cooperates a little bit, maybe relents a little. But one thing I was going to say, George, in terms of going to this game, what I'm excited about outside of Richardson and kind of looking at it from an entire offensive perspective, kind of going into things we expect for the first preseason game, I'm truly excited to see, and hopefully Mother Nature allows this, what Shane Steichen's offense is truly going to look like. Because this has been a guy that, again, is talked about constantly. He builds the offense around the quarterback. And even in practice, again, it's truly tough when you have a dynamic running quarterback to use his legs because it's 7-on-7s, it's 11-on-11s. The quarterback is not live. Half the time they're not in full pads anyway, so you're not getting a true pass rush. So you don't really know how much Shane Steichen's going to want to use Anthony Richardson's legs, if he's going to have him try to be more of a pocket passer and run when the lanes are open or when the throwing lanes are not there. Like, I'm excited to see kind of what kind of offense we're going to get. Is it going to be like a lot of Jalen Hurts in the Eagles offense last year and kind of the RPO style? Are we going to see a little bit more drop back passing? I'm excited to see it. I hope we get a chance to see what the identity of this Colts offense is going to look like now that will finally, again, have a true game-like atmosphere and situation to judge it against.
I think the early indications are there will be a lot of RPOs. We've seen that going back even to the spring. I don't think that's a big shock to anyone. That's something that I think Richardson's familiar with that from college. Steichen's familiar with that from Philly. So I think it'll be more of an RPO offense than a straight drop back offense. But I also think even if the weather's perfect, he's not going to show anything. I mean, it's just Frank Reich always would talk about being vanilla and, hiding as much as you can. The one thing this team has going for them this year is the element of surprise. You've got a quarterback no one's seen play in the NFL. You've got a system that no one's quite sure what it's going to be, because you can watch the Philadelphia tape and you can make educated guesses, but you really don't know, until they get out there on the field, how he's going to use the talent around him in Indy. So I don't think you're going to see, a lot of this offense. I think you're going to see basic concepts. Shane even said, today and even a couple times this preseason, fundamentals are really what he's looking for the most, and I think Jim Bob Cooter mentioned that as well too, that, as they go into this game, the number one thing that they're judging is fundamentals. So I think you're going to see a pretty basic vanilla kind of, we're lining up, put a hat on a hat, and try to make a play kind of situation, more than any real preview of what this offense will be.
Let me ask you your opinion on this, because I hear that and I get it in the sense of a coach's game planning situation. Like I said, that is one of the few things the Colts have going for them is the fact that no one really knows what they're going to be. But I think I would argue that would hurt Anthony Richardson more than help, just because this is a guy who, again, does need development. If you're Shane Steichen, wouldn't you want to, especially in 3 games that truly don't count, wouldn't you want to kind of see like what works, what doesn't work, what is he comfortable with, what is he not comfortable with? And in a situation where you do have mulligans, right? If he throws 3 picks against the Buffalo Bills, and let's say it's on similar concepts, it's a mulligan in the sense, okay, maybe he's not fully there on this area of the playbook yet, so let's work on this more, compared to if you just go in vanilla, plain Jane, and you're running just basic high school offensive plays. Like, does that, I guess my thing is, I'd rather use these preseason games, George, to still help the development of Anthony Richardson, rather than try to mask what you're going to do in offense and allow the Jacksonville Jaguars on week number 1 basically going blind. I'd rather, I guess, have them learn some tendencies of what the Shane Steichen offense will look like, but also because they're trying to help see what Anthony Richardson does well versus what he can't do well, versus keeping it simple and then kind of, for lack of a better term, throwing it all out there in week number 1 and seeing what works and what doesn't work, when the bullets at this point are actually live.
I think that's why you're seeing them do the 2 joint practices, though. I think that's where you'll see what you're talking about. They'll do that there, where only the people in attendance and the other team sees it, where it's not broadcast, on NFL Network, what they replay these games 25 times, it feels like. I think, because I think there definitely is a major benefit to getting those looks for, Anthony. But I think also in this first one, even the vanilla looks and the vanilla plays are important for him, because even that, I think at this point, on Saturday, is still a big thing. And again, if the weather is as bad as they say, then it all won't matter anyway. But I do think that's why you're seeing the 2 practices with the Bears and the one with the Eagles, is because that's where you'll go out and you'll run a little more of the concepts that you want to run, and actually test that stuff in an environment where, if you're Steichen, not only can other teams not see it, but you've got a lower chance of your quarterback getting injured too. So because he's got the red jersey on. It's never a zero. We know that. There's never no chance, but it's lower than a game. So I think it's a tightrope in a lot of ways, because you are trying to give him as good a look as he can have before he gets to Jacksonville, and at the same time, you want to hold as much back as you can. I think it's something that, and Shane's a first year coach, so it's not like he's done this over and over and over again, but he's
Right.
been a part of the process, and he did it with why is his name escaping me?
Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert out there in the Chargers. And to a lesser degree, he did it with Jalen Hurts. Hurts had played before and had started before as a rookie, but he was there the first year that Hurts went in as the starter, and that they built everything around him. Because when you're a mid-season replacement, the offense wasn't built around you. They're adjusting on the fly. So, he has been a part of it before. But I do think it's going to be a balance that they've got to strike, because yeah, it's kind of like with your kid, how much is too much? You want to give them freedom to make their own mistakes, make their own decisions, but then at the same time, you want to protect them as much as you can. I think that's where Shane is right now with Anthony Richardson.
That's a fair point on Herbert and Hurts, in the sense that he has kind of gone through this before, in terms of, like I said, with Hurts, he had like 3 or 4 starts at the end of the year in 2020. So basically going into 2021, when Shane Steichen got there, it was his first full year as a starter. And for lack of a better term, with the little experience he had, was basically a rookie. That's fair. So now this is kind of the third time he's going through this, which is good. So hopefully he has figured out what works and what doesn't work. And we will see, like I said, probably not revealing too much in Buffalo, especially if the weather's not great, but still definitely excited to kind of see what Anthony Richardson can do here in about the quarter or so work that he'll get. Most starters for the Colts should be playing, especially on offense. They released a depth chart on, was it Wednesday, I believe, either Tuesday night or Wednesday, going into preseason game number 1. They have Jonathan Taylor as a starter. Hot take, George. JT will be nowhere near the field in Buffalo. It'll be nowhere near the city of Buffalo. I would feel pretty confident saying that.
Now, he won't even be eating wings down the street. You'll be nowhere near Orchard Park, Buffalo, the state of New York. None of that.
So no JT. It seems like what? So tight ends is a mash unit right now. No, we can assume on Saturday, no Mo Alley Cox, no Jelani Woods, no Drew Ogletree.
Yeah, he didn't practice today, so we'll see. Maybe he was just resting up for the game. They do that sometimes with the guy who has any little nick, that it's like, well, why it was an hour practice today. So, why put him through that? Same with Braden Smith, who wasn't out there today, that possible that he'll be able to go on Saturday. Running back situation, of course, even without JT in the mix, is messed up as well. Deion Jackson's out. So is today. Xavier Scott was out. We'll see if he's another long-term or if he's just a today situation, but you're probably looking at Evan Hall and Kenyon Drake running with the ones, I would imagine.
So that's going to be a little bit of a mash unit there with the running backs for sure. And you mentioned Braden Smith out of practice or not at practice, I should say, on Thursday, which maybe you're right. Maybe they're just saving him for Saturday. Maybe I'm going to go in the assumption here today that he won't play on Saturday. So if you have
Always
that,
the best.
right. Always, especially in preseason, for preseason game number 1, you'd assume that. But I'm still, George, even if they are without Braden Smith, I'm still really excited to see this offensive line. We talked about a little bit with Tony Sparano Jr. in the last podcast and how he's sort of, starting to develop and mesh with this unit. And now we're going to see for the first time again, actually, if there's any progress, and hopefully, again, with accountability and holding these guys, or building chemistry, I should say, holding these guys accountable and building chemistry, the 2 areas that Tony Sparano has really kind of pushed so far in training camp this year. Really a good test to see with Bernard Ryman at left tackle, how much he's progressed so far in this offseason. Will Fries at right guard, how much he has progressed so far. Obviously, you want to see a bounce back from Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson. Even with Braden Smith out, George, I still think we can learn a lot about this offensive line from Saturday, how they play on Saturday here. And I'm very excited kind of seeing the first step and the first kind of resume building tape that they put out there.
Yeah, again, the weather might affect that because it's going to slow down the Buffalo defense theoretically, if it's as bad as it might be. But you want to see them, how physical are they going to be? We've talked about it several times, and I think it bears repeating. Each time, it's incredibly important for Richardson's development that this line get back on track. And so, Do you need to see 5 yards of carry? Do you need to see a completely clean pocket? You need to see progress. You need to see something where you can, hang your hat on and feel good going forward. Now, we'll see. The conditions will definitely affect this as well. But in some ways, if it's muddy and it's rainy and everybody knows you're going to run, you could see a little bit of that grit too. So I I think the line, to me, on offense, aside from the quarterback, the line is probably the thing I'm paying the most attention to.
That's where I think Mother Nature can actually work in the benefit for this offense. Is like you said, I mean, George, this team was awful on 3rd and short last year. When you knew it was 3rd down and 1, 3rd down and 2, and you had to run the ball to get the first down. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it feels like less than 50% of the time they were converting. And that should be an almost 80% sort of thing every single time. If you have a competent offensive line and how much money they're putting in this O-line, just getting a push even. If they're able to do that on Saturday consistently, I would say is a huge step forward, because that was an area that they were just, I never got off on last year.
There's no question. And I think that's one of the things Sperano was talking about. He's seen that. Well, it wasn't Sperano, it was Jim Bob Cooter who was saying he's seen that happen a few times out here in practice so far, where they got that little push or they had a nice double team, or, the first team in particular has had its moments. So now you want to take that to the playing field, and do it against another team wearing a different colored jersey. To me, that's as important as anything Anthony Richardson does on Saturday.
Couldn't agree more. That is right. Number one in terms of what we're watching Saturday is obviously Anthony Richardson. But on offense, number 2, without a doubt, is the offensive line. How do they hold up in pass protection? And more importantly, in the run game, can they get a push? Can you get something going, some sort of momentum going forward here? Because that was an area that they just were terrible in last year. When it comes to the receiving game, George, kind of what to expect for the preseason, I guess I got bad news for Isaiah McKenzie. You had Sean McDermott on Thursday kind of basically giving out the game plan. If they're going to double and triple team Isaiah McKenzie, his homecoming is not going to be a welcoming one for sure, going back to Buffalo. So it seems like Isaiah McKenzie, to steal Sean McDermott's words, is going to be the most wanted man in Buffalo on Saturday.
I mean, if that's what Buffalo wants to do, they better pay some attention to number 14. I'll tell you that right now. We talked about that on the last show. If the weather is conducive, Alec Pierce has been getting open, and he's been getting open all the time. So if they want to put all their attention on Isaiah McKenzie, I think Anthony Richardson would greatly appreciate that.
That connection, George, seems, especially early on in training camp, and I know even on Thursday's practice, it was just helmets, right? Were they even in shoulder pads? So it's just
it was just helmets and shorts.
So you're not doing a ton, but even today, I believe today was another productive day for Pierce.
Every day is a productive day for Pierce. Another big play. I mean, Richardson was 5 of 12 overall, and his biggest play by far was a sideline back shoulder throw to Alec Pierce, which Richardson said afterwards. They've been trying to get that to work now for a couple of weeks. So hitting one today was a big step for him. But Pierce has just been, Darrell Baker's had a good camp, and we've talked about that a lot. And it's reflected in the fact that he's a starter on that depth chart. Pierce has been roasting him, especially the last couple of days in particular. He's just, his route running is made that leap that you want to see. Now, we'll see what happens, because I think the flip side of that is, well, are the Colts defensive backs, are they the problem here? We've talked before about how young they are. Several rookies, even the guys with a year of experience, it's been mostly practice squad. I mean, you're talking about, very few snaps on defense for this group. So it'll be good to see Pierce go out there against, veterans, against guys who have done it before in the NFL. But if Buffalo's game plan is built around Isaiah McKenzie and the weather is conducive to it, that might be something they regret.
Folks, fantasy football drafts are coming up this weekend, next weekend, 2 weeks from now. Pierce seems to be, George, progressing in that maybe breakout kind of category. And right now, who's a sleeper, not getting a lot of attention. That could be a really productive and really consistent connection so far that seemingly early on is getting a lot of, or having a lot of success, I should say. But I think you bring up a good point, and that kind of, I think, easily transitions over to the defense in terms of kind of what to watch for here in preseason game number 1 against the Bills, where on offense, at least, no Josh Allen, no Stephon Diggs for the Bills. So obviously that's going to be a drastically different look against what you're going against in terms of trying to slow this Buffalo offense down. But you mentioned it. Dallas Baker has played well. He's going to be a starter. On the other side is Dallas Flowers. So two guys at least right away having really good camps, really productive camps, are getting rewarded in terms of starting the preseason opener. But you're all right. I'm interested, even without Stephon Diggs out there, is it the product of, hey, they're playing well? Or is it the product of actually, maybe they are, they are truly not as bad now when they go against a little different competition, they get exposed. It's going to be a nice test for Dallas Baker to kind of truly be able to maybe cement himself as a starter going forward and take it away from a guy in Juju Brents, who obviously, because injury is not practiced a lot, but I think a guy that when he was drafted, George, we would have penciled in as a starter for week one, almost no doubt about it.
Well, I think Brents and Rush have been working with the twos. I don't expect to see them come out with the twos. And that's a big moment too, because they're much like Anthony Richardson. They're making their debuts. Jalen Jones is a guy who's been with threes, 7th-round rookie who has flashed at times. I know Mike Strawn's been frustrated by him a few times out there. Interesting to see if he can bring that over to the field and make plays. But yeah, I mean, that cornerback spot, their starters listed because you have to. There's 2 spots on the sheet you had to fill in, but that's wide open. I mean, and not taking anything away from Flowers and especially Baker, who's been really good, but they know that this is a wide open competition. And I think this is really a major checkpoint for everybody at that position. Get out there. I'm sure they're going to rotate through quite a bit and see who can make plays in live situations. I think such a big part of Gus Bradley's defense is physicality, getting up there, playing press coverage. You can do a little bit of that out here, but obviously on Saturday, the gloves are off. You can go out there and it's all live. It all counts. So I think defensively, 2 things I'm looking at are that cornerback slot and see just how everybody rotates through there. And if anybody catches your eye, and the pass rush, because we talked about that before, they're in a similar boat. There's a little more experience. Some guys there like Samson Ebukam, who's done it in San Francisco and with the Rams, Tyquan Lewis, who when he's healthy is shown that, he can put some pressure on the quarterback. And then both the Dangbo and Pitty have, Quiddy Pay. I just put that.
I like that. I like the quick Pitty.
Both the Dangbo and Pay have, when they're healthy, have shown that they have a lot of upside as well. But you don't have somebody with a 10 sack season on their resume. You don't have a unique Ngakoue here, who you kind of know what you're going to get from them. So I think that rotation is another thing that's really interesting to watch. And without Josh Allen, who would normally be running around and make it difficult to sack, can it get consistent pressure on this Bills passing game? For me, those 2 spots are going to be such key areas this year. When we talk about, this team potentially struggling, being so young and so inexperienced at the pass rush and in the secondary, it's a major concern coming into the season. And, how's it going to look in this first test?
This is something I've been thinking about. I want to hear your thoughts on this because I feel like those 2 positions, defensive end, really, especially corner and quarterback, all 3, I think, are positions where it's not about how they start, it's how they finish, right? I think we expect all 3, maybe a little less defensive line, but especially corner and especially quarterback, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. But you hope come week 18, you see improvement compared to week number 1. And I guess I'll ask this question this way. Would you, if right now the preseason starters for game number 1, where you have Quiddy Pay and Samson Ebukam, with really Dayo Dangbo being the 3rd pass rusher there. If those 2 starters, and in the secondary you have Dallas Flowers, and you have Dallas Baker Jr., those 2 starters, if they are starting week 18 and they are your best corners for preseason game number 1 all the way through week 18, is that a disappointment? Because I would say yes, in the sense that maybe my answer will help kind of clarify this. Like if Juju Brents, and again, he's not starting, I think, primarily because he's been hurt, right? He's barely practiced. He got back to practice less than a week ago. That makes a lot of sense. But if he can't break through, and he's going to have plenty of opportunities this year to break through, if he can't break through and get significant playing time and truly make an improvement, if Darius Rush is someone who can't get on the field consistently, even Dayo Dangbo, who's someone that there was a lot of upside and promise with, and the Colts felt very lucky that they got him where they did, in large part because he had his torn Achilles coming out of college. That kind of pushed his value down, where they're able to get him in the second round. Like if those three guys are still backups by the time we're talking about week 18 or not big contributors, I would say it's a disappointment.
Oh, I agree. I think Baker has a chance to be something. It's going to be interesting to watch him. He's got a lot of the fit that you want in this defense. I think he's going to make it hard to beat him out. Dallas Flowers also has a lot of the athleticism, and they feel good about him. Obviously, the GM brought him up in the pre-camp press conference without anybody asking about him, which is always a good sign for these guys. But you drafted, especially Juju, for a reason, and you drafted him in the second round for a reason. If he's not starting by week 18, that would be disappointing. Unless the other two are playing at a Pro Bowl level, I think it would be absolutely disappointing. And to a lesser degree, on the defensive line as well. I mean, Ebukam brings some things, especially in the run game, that you need that kind of veteran presence out there. But if Dangbo is not a regular part of this rotation, he's not productive. I think that's the biggest thing with him and Pay is, can they play, something closer to 17 games, and can they produce? Can you get both of them at least around that 8-9 sack territory? Maybe break through and have 10 sacks. That I think would be disappointing if at least one of them isn't pushing into that 8.5, 9, 10 sack area. It'll be a disappointing campaign.
That's what 2023 is, right? It's about development and getting better. So even, what we're seeing for those starting preseason game number 1, does that mean that, that's the starting lineup setting goals and that should be how the season, how the team finishes that year? Like I said, it should be where you hope to kind of see guys take strides, and especially with Dio now coming, 2 years removed from the injury, and really, should be hopefully, definitely should be 100%. And you kind of hope that he really takes that big step where he, like I said, is consistently productive. And then again, when you draft Juju Brents as high as you do, you hope that he's able to get on the field consistently, stay healthy, but also then make some plays that shows you at the end of the year, oh yeah, this is why we drafted him. And now you can kind of feel good going to 2024 that still young and inexperienced, but you still have at least some signs you can kind of go forward with compared to ending the year. If it is Darrell Baker and if it is Dallas Flowers, no disrespect to them. You mentioned it. If they're playing at a Pro Bowl level, it's different. I would be shocked, George. I'll just say this right now. I'll be shocked if we're talking about either in the Pro Bowl conversation. I know.
Oh, absolutely.
I know you had Tyler Huntley be a Pro Bowl quarterback last year for the Ravens. Unless something like that happens where they just desperately need a body and everyone else is saying no. Other than that, I don't think we'll be talking about them in that kind of realm, at least after 2023. How about, George? We talked a lot about defense and not talking about one name specifically, Shaq Leonard. There's been no updates so far, at least of Thursday, of whether Shaq Leonard will play on Saturday or not. The last time Shane Steichen was asked about it was back on Tuesday, and he said, we're still working through it in classic Steichen form, giving you no sort of answer whatsoever. So would you play him, George? If you were Shane Steichen going up to Buffalo on Saturday, would you play Shaq Leonard? Would you kind of hold him off and sit him out?
I think I would hold him off. You're hearing everything so far. The coach is really excited about what they're seeing from him in camp, and he's building. I think he's getting more and more snaps. It seems like he's out there a little more often, each day. You're ramping that up. To me, keep that process as it is. I don't know that honestly, I don't know if I play him this preseason. Get him out there, get his feet wet, against the Bears, against the Eagles in these joint practices, and just let him be in those controlled environments. Because I just don't know. You're trying to bring him back. He's been on a pitch count. You're being careful in every other way. I don't know what you got to gain from him being in game action. From a viewer standpoint, sure. It's always more fun to watch him out there. But from trying to get him as ready as he can be from week 1 of the season, I don't know what there is to gain. Jonathan Taylor didn't take a snap the last 2 preseasons because they felt like there's really no reason. He doesn't need it. And I think Leonard is kind of in that same boat in my mind.
The reason why I would say I would play him if I was Shane Steichen is just because look, he basically missed all of last year, right? It was, he was like, what, 3 games, I think, total.
4 snaps.
But it basically missed all last year. So this is a guy that's not played a lot of football. And I would, even just like a series, not saying play him even a quarter, but I would honestly put him out there for a series or 2, just because it is different. It is, the closest thing you'll get to a game day situation. I know, the joint practices do a good job of mimicking that. And they'll get 3 of those over the next 2 weeks. I just would, even for like a series or two, just allow him to kind of get his feet wet again, kind of get him back into the rhythm of what it's like to play against an opponent and in a situation where it is fully live, and you're going and hitting guys that aren't your teammates. I would just see how he reacts. Put him kind of back there and slowly build him up. And even if, again, if it's just a series or two, kind of let him slowly rev up his engine where he can be in the right lane right now, take it slow. And then as you're slowly getting through the preseason, use this almost as an entire build-up period to where he's ready to go week number 1, and it's still not new, if you will, by the time the Jaguars roll to town.
I know if it's up to him, if it's his decision to make, he'll play. I can tell you that much.
I would agree with that. That is not someone who is voluntarily sitting out. And if he's not told anything else, I'm with you. I think he'd play, and I think he'd play the whole game if he had it up to him. That's just the way the maniac is wired, without a doubt. You mentioned his name before, so obligatory daily mention here on the podcast, Jonathan Taylor. We got a few updates and a very bizarre last 24 hours when it comes to the running back situation. Let's start with Jonathan Taylor first. Shane Steichen did provide an update, and I guess maybe provide some sort of clarity more than he's done in the past. He said after practice on Thursday that Jonathan Taylor is expected, or was it the word should? I think it was the word should be back at Westfield next week. So we at least have a timeline of when he should be back at practice for the Colts. But he also did not say whether he would practice or not, kind of left that open-ended. I'm going to assume, George, that he does not expect him to practice. So, but at least we got word of when we can expect Jonathan Taylor to be back. Whether he will or not is a different story. But seemingly next week at some point, probably you would assume before the Bears come to town on, what is that, Wednesday, I believe, right?
Yeah, Wednesday and Thursday.
That he should be at least, even not in practice, but just on the sidelines again. Are you buying that?
Should be back in Westfield, should be back viewing practice at least. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think otherwise right now. It's just, the whole thing's been so bizarre. Didn't expect him to be gone to begin with. So, they say he'll be back next week. We'll watch and see. So far, Shane's 1 for 1. He said Richardson would be back the next day from nose surgery, and there he was. So for now, take him as word. When he hasn't had much to say, he's avoided the question altogether. He did throw that out there that he should be back next week. So we'll see how that goes. As far as him getting on the field, there's got to be a clock here at some point. I sympathize with Jonathan Taylor a lot. We've talked before about how tough his situation is, where the Colts are promising you nothing beyond this year. They want you to come out, have a great season, and help develop this rookie quarterback and help lay the foundation for this offense. But then, they're not really giving you any guarantees beyond that. And it's a really tough situation to be in. But that being said, I think the other side of the tough situation for him is that the clock is ticking. Is he going to sit out the season? And the first preseason game's this weekend, right? The regular season is, I think, a month from today as we're doing this pod right now. So every day that passes that he's not on the field, he hasn't been on a football field in pads since that memorable game in Minnesota. So last December. So at some point he's got to get ready for somebody to go out there and play. And I think that's the longer the ankle injury lingers. We talked about that last time. If it's a legitimate injury and you're out there trying to seek more rehab, the longer that lingers, the worse your market is. The less you play, the worse your market is. I mean, he's at a point where if he doesn't play at all this year, you could hit the free agent market next year with the last time anybody saw you playing, you were banged up and you weren't yourself, and then you didn't play for a year. It's hard to imagine that improving the running back market for him in any way.
No, without a doubt. And that's why, like I said, it comes to the fact that his only option is to play, which is why I don't think the Colts should trade him. And I don't think he's going to sit out. He will be a Colt this year, in large part because none of the other options benefit him. And none of the other options benefit the Colts in the sense that he is a depreciated asset, and you're not going to get anywhere near the value you should get for a guy of his talent on the trade market, especially now where he's away from the team. Again, we don't know what he's also doing away from the team. Shane Steichen said anytime he's not at practice, he's rehabbing. So assuming or we can assume, I guess, that he's doing some sort of rehab away from the team. But is it rehab? Is it a second opinion? Is he just trying to catch his breath and not be, in the spotlight? I have no idea why he's away from the team, and what he's doing now that he's not at Grand Park and at practice every single day. And it's
in Denmark getting platelet-rich treatments. I mean, it's happened before.
There is a pipeline there. There is an absolute pipeline, and unfortunately, a well-documented connection between the Colts and Netherlands. To where if they do need someone's help, they have some numbers to call, and they have some numbers to call. But like that's also where this is so frustrating in the sense that like we are getting no information, and so it's like we are trying to figure out, will Jonathan Taylor be on the field week number 1? Is he healthy enough to be on the field week number 1? Is he holding out? Is he actually injured and his ankle is worse off than we thought? And what I'm going to go at least read the tea leaves here, George, in trying to do to predict when he'll be back is I am a little bit more optimistic than I was this time when we recorded our podcast on Tuesday. Because when he left the team, we both kind of like, that's bad news. Like we're talking about an ankle surgery that happened 8 months ago and you're still not, healed for it, even though EJ Speed got the same injury and he's good to go, or the same surgery and he's good to go. And this is, again, a 1 month recovery period. And now we're talking about 8 months, still nothing's right. But the reason, so I'll be honest, I was very nervous about Tuesday, his return, and his likelihood that he could, even be on the team or off PUP to start the season. But what has me feeling, I guess, better now, 2 days removed, about his ability to suit up, let's say within the first month of the season, is you see what happened the last few days with the Colts in terms of running back transactions. And I want to know how much you're reading to this, George. There was a report, and it makes sense when you have Jonathan Taylor out, Zach Moss with a broken arm out, and Deion Jackson now has missed almost the entire week of practice so far. So your top 3 guys, running back wise, are all out of practice. You need bodies. I get that. You signed Kenyon Drake, and they reportedly were very aggressive in going after Kareem Hunt, where Kareem Hunt, if you haven't seen it, was at the Saints facility going through some sort of workout, or was about to partake in a workout for the Saints. And all of a sudden his agent gets a call from the Colts and, hey, we'll give you more money right now. Just come here and we'll talk. He leaves New Orleans, goes to the Colts because they have an offer that's better than what the Saints are giving him. And Kareem Hunt was at the facility by all accounts yesterday, and then left yesterday without a deal, without a contract whatsoever. So clearly there was some sort of snag there, whether it was money related, maybe the Colts, maybe the way they framed the money and actually how the contract laid out were two different things. Maybe that there was the reps that, Kareem Hunt thought he was going to be getting weren't actually there. And they did make a running back signing yesterday, and it was Jason Huntley, who was with the Eagles in 2020 and 2021, but is someone who in his entire NFL career has 18 carries for 70 yards. The signing of Jason Huntley, George, to me, tell me if I'm wrong, says that the Colts are not as worried about Jonathan Taylor missing a significant amount of time as maybe I thought 2 days ago. Because if they were truly worried, I don't think you're signing Jason Huntley, unproven practice squad player who's not even in the league last year on an active roster. You're not signing him if you're expecting Jonathan Taylor to be out 9 games, 10 games, maybe the whole year. I'm going to take what happened where they kind of lured Kareem Hunt to town, didn't give him the deal he wanted, or did not sign him for whatever reason, and then instead signed basically a scrub, if you will, in terms of NFL standards. I don't think you're doing that if you are truly fearful or believing Jonathan Taylor is going to be out for an extended amount of time. How would you kind of digest the entire running back snafu that happened in the last, let's say, 36 hours?
I think your logic is sound. It's just such a bizarre situation, and it has been from the start of training camp that it's sort of like last year. I don't know if logic applies. I mean, once we get into this circus territory that we're into with the Jonathan Taylor situation, I try not to read into anything because I don't think normal physics apply here anymore. Just because, we've gone down this road to where you've got motor coaches and meetings and trade requests and potential injuries and offsite rehab, and I don't know what's next. So I think the logic behind everything you said is completely sound, and I can't argue against reading it that way. But I also just am taking I'm just going to judge what's right in front of me approach, because we're in bizarro world again, and who knows what tomorrow or later today will bring.
It's frustrating because this is like the only avenue we have, right? The Colts are not honest. They don't give you any sort of information or details. They're not, they don't get out ahead of things. So we're forced to basically read the tea leaves and interpret it how we believe. And it's a guess. Like, I don't have any information. Shane Steichen's not out there giving us any information. So it's a total guess. But it's like the logic of just like, why, like, we know, right? Chris Ballard is not aggressive whatsoever in free agency. So the fact that he was aggressive enough to call Kareem Hunt to give him a bigger deal, to get him out of New Orleans, to get him to Indy, like basically ASAP, was out of norm, out of character for Chris Ballard. And so it's like he's being that aggressive. I don't know if information changed on the flight over or whatever, but why? I'm shocked, I guess, that when you're that aggressive to get Kareem Hunt to town, I'm shocked you don't sign him. And he's a big enough name, even if his game is decreasing, he is a big enough name where you could kind of sell in a way of, hey, John Taylor's going to be out for a while, but Kareem Hunt is here to kind of hold his place instead. You can't do that with Evan Hull, with Kenyon Drake, and with
Jason Huntley.
And I was going to say Tyler Huntley, the former Utah quarterback,
Don't,
with Jason Huntley. You can't sell that.
Don't underestimate Xavier Scott, but I guess he's probably in that category too.
Yes, he is. No disrespect to Mr. Scott himself, but like that's the issue for the Colts right now is if you actually expected Jonathan Taylor to be out 9 games, again, this team is not going to be very good, right? We talked about this for a while. Wins in 2023 do not matter. So it's not like this is a Super Bowl or bust roster where you got to, hey, someone's hurt. We desperately need to get someone else in here so we could still get production and still win a lot of games. It truly does not matter from a wins and losses perspective if the Colts can get production out of the running backs or not. But where it does matter is in developing Anthony Richardson. And we talked about what the offense is going to look like before and kind of what we can expect from a Shane Steichen offense. You said you believe it's going to be a lot more kind of RPO, maybe mirroring closer to what the Eagles did last year in Jalen Hurts compared to maybe a more traditional drop back style of Justin Herbert and even Josh Allen a little bit. If that's the case, George, the running back then is still important for Anthony Richardson's development. So you're not just going to throw Joe Blow in the backfield and say, all right, good luck. You still want to put a talented guy back there so you can help Anthony Richardson get better as a quarterback and not have half his game cut off because no one respects the running game of whoever's next to him. So you still need, even though, again, they're not going for it this year, they're not a playoff team this year, I think you still need talent at the running back position just to help Anthony Richardson become a better quarterback throughout this entire year. So I don't think you could just mail it in. And that's why when you kind of see right now, the Kareem Hunt deal, again, there's a lot of analytics that say he's on the decline. The Browns easily had a chance to bring him back and bring back that 1-2 punch of him and Nick Chubb, and they refused to. So maybe it's just the fact that Hunt wanted too much money and the Colts say, you're not good enough, you're not worth it, fine, see you later. But it's not like these are legitimate running backs they're bringing in that I get it. No one's going to replace Jonathan Taylor, right? And no one's coming in here and saying, okay, this is comparable. But you can still at least make it salvageable. The guys I have right now on the roster are not salvaging the running back situation, which, again, tell me if I'm wrong, George, makes me believe the Colts right now have a more confident feeling that Jonathan Taylor will be out there, again, let's say within the first month, where even if he's not out there week number 1, it's not going to be a huge absence that they're going to have to make up for. They feel pretty confident from an ankle injury and from a contract holdout standpoint, he'll be on the field sooner rather than later.
That's a logic that holds up with a functional franchise. So I follow it. It makes sense, but still, this we've talked about it several times on here. This team's lost the benefit of the doubt. So the whole thing's bizarre. The way the Kareem Hunt situation played out was incredibly bizarre. Coming from New Orleans, being offered more money, then getting here and not signing a deal. Nothing about that makes a lot of sense. The logic that you're applying to it is probably the most reasonable way of viewing it. This is not a functional franchise until they prove otherwise right now. And so, again, I just don't know if I can apply logic. It's just another weird thing that happened in a series of the last 18 months full of, I refer you to Matt Ryan's assessment of the last 18 months right now. And that's sort of where that's where I'm at.
To guys clean up, he called it a poop show. But you know what? Again, that's strong words come from Matt Ryan, who's Mr. Corporate, Mr. Buttoned Up, feel like never talks out of character. He had plenty of chances last year, George. You were in the locker room. You had plenty of opportunities to crush this team, crush the head coach, crush the owner, crush the GM, and he did not. And so for him to say what he did as a guy who's very measured himself speaks volumes. And we're kind of seeing that play out yet again in just the latest drama, George, that is truly confounding, where up is down, down is up, right is left. It makes no sense. We're living in a bizarre world, and it just continues to get more maddening, more frustrating. But I mean, again, from the little details we know, I guess you could say it is a positive that Jonathan Taylor is at least returning to the Colts and return to Grant Park next week. Even though it doesn't seem like he's going to practice, at least whatever he left the team for to get whatever checked out or second opinion, at least he's returning.
To me, this whole thing's like the Hall of Mirrors. You see things and you're trying to figure out what's what, and it's just all distorted, and none of it really makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, bottom line, the Hunt situation is just another really odd occurrence amongst many around this team the last 18 months. And the Taylor situation, yeah, I mean, he's coming back. That's positive, right? Doesn't sound like anything's changed. He still wants to be traded. They still don't want to offer him a contract. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Really quick, George, I think, last year was not our best when it comes to picks. So why not try it again? It's the preseason, so don't hold us to it. These picks do not count for the regular season. We might as well knock the rust off here, George. Preseason game number 1, Colts, Bills prediction. You can go score. You can go Anthony Richardson stat line. Like, what are we thinking? What are you expecting will happen on Saturday in Orchard Park?
I think the first team offense is going to look rough. It just has all week. It has more often than not during training camp. I think they're going to have their moments, but I don't think you're going to see consistent brilliance from them. I think it's a work in progress, and I think probably most people understand that right now. So I think it's going to look like a work in progress, out there. Buffalo, as we mentioned, has a pretty good defense. They can cause problems for even some of the best offenses in this league. If the weather gets like it is expected to, I think that's going to make it even more sloppy, especially for a young quarterback, in those elements. But I think it's good. I think we're going to come out of this first game with a better understanding of who Anthony Richardson is on a competitive level. Because if it gets sloppy like that and you're facing a really good defense, I think you're gonna learn something about him, how he reacts to that, good or bad.
I'm gonna say, so 1 quarter, let's say 3 drives. I'll say he leads them. I think they'll get 1 field goal. I think they will kind of have 1 field goal. I'm going to assume, and I'm going to predict 1 big rush. I think he will have a nice 20, 25 yard, 30 yard run where it's wow, this guy is that's electric, and this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But I'm with you. I think it's going to be more bad than good. I will say no turnovers, but also no touchdowns. I'm going to say 3 of 8 passing, 15, 20 yards, something like that. Again, 1 big run, get him field goal territory, kind of drive stalls from there. Matt Gay makes his money, drills a field goal, but otherwise, the other 2 drives, I don't think much is going to happen here. I'm with you. I think it's going to look rough, but again, it's how does he bounce back? How does he look even when things are not going his way? Is he making the right decision, or just receivers not making plays for him? Is just maybe the accuracy a little bit off, but the decision is right. There's still a lot to watch. It's still a lot of positives to take away, even if what we're kind of talking about, the offense not looking great, happens and does come to fruition. There's still several linings we can kind of take away from, depending on how, again, things do operate and things do look here. So, George, it is nice finally to kind of talk about, I can't even say real game, but it's nice to see a different opponent, see a different jersey, different scheme, different players, and kind of see how this team reacts. I'm very excited to at least see that aspect of this preseason. So
and congratulations to Anthony Richardson on a sparkling debut, because with both of us predicting what's going, he's undoubtedly going to look like an MVP on Saturday.
That is true. With our prediction skills, you're right about that. It's going to go 7 of 8, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground. It's going to be 21-0. He'll get MVP votes already, or MVP chance in Buffalo, I'm sure, after just 1 quarter of play. So looking forward to that. George mentioned before, but just to reiterate here, our schedule is going to be Sunday morning. We're going to record our post-game preseason game number 1 thoughts, all reaction to Anthony Richardson's debut, but also, again, offensive line, how are they going to play? What's the secondary going to look like in their first action against a different team? So much to take away from and break down from the preseason opener in beautiful Buffalo, New York. So very excited for that. So we will be back on Sunday. So make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Blue Horseshoe Podcast, and on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod as well. Make sure you are subscribing. We got so much more content coming your way, including our first post-game reaction of this season. So have a great weekend. Enjoy it. Go. Finally excited to see Anthony Richardson kind of taking on some real game action. We'll break it down all with you on Sunday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.